Welcome to Combat Zone 360, where we discuss everything military. Today on our show, we have co-host of In Honor of and Army Colonel retired Paul Dietrich. Thank you for joining me today.
Nice to be here, Jay.
Thank you. Now, what I usually do with all my guests is I have them give a background of where they came from, their military service. And I know today we have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to ask you just to give a quick summary of where you grew up, military service, and all that.
Okay. Was born here on Staten Island in Travis. Moved to Port Richmond as a child and grew up in Port Richmond. And got married here on Staten Island to another Staten Island person. So both of us are lifelong Staten Islanders. Worked in an oil refinery in New Jersey, also a number of other locations in the oil industry in the United States, and joined the reserves in 1975 as a E1 private, and ended up getting commissioned as a lieutenant, commanded at the company level and also at the brigade level. In fact, I had first a deputy commander's position and then a commander's position. Spent 6 months in South Korea and 2 years, 2 months and a day in Iraq.
There you go. And what brought you to changing over from enlisted to officer?
Actually, it was a mentor of mine, was a command sergeant major in the brigade. In fact, the brigade that your wife works at, the 8th Medical Brigade.
Okay.
And he said, son, you really need to think about becoming an officer. So
now, with you going into officer, I know you became a colonel. How long did you do in the reserves altogether?
34 years, 9 months.
It's a good career.
Yep.
It's a good career. Now, I know we have you on this show to talk about legislative right now, and one thing I usually don't do is I don't bring politics into the show because we're all about veterans, but this is something that benefits the veterans.
Absolutely.
Yes, and it's H.R.299. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, H.R.299 is a House resolution that was passed in the House unanimously, and basically it deals with what's known as the Blue Water Navy veterans from the Iraq War era. It also deals with Air Forcemen who served on air bases in Thailand, where they also used Agent Orange. And believe it or not, it deals with Army veterans who were on the DMZ in Korea during a certain time period. What's really amazing to me is that there is a year period or so when they were veterans are covered for Agent Orange exposure on the DMZ, but they were using it there for almost a year and a half.
Wow.
And the other 6 months, if you happen to be unlucky enough to be there during those 6 months, too bad. This bill covers all of those gaps. And the way I look at the Blue Water Navy bill, I was an engineer in the oil industry. In the Navy, your water that you drink, the water you make your coffee with, that you shower in, is made from seawater. If they used a chemical on land, it's got to be in the water that they're processing to put into your drinking water.
Agreed.
It's got to be there.
Yeah.
It just can't be anywhere else. So, yes, people were exposed onshore, and those people are covered. But the Blue Water Navy bill would cover all of those in all of those conditions that right now are not covered. And if they have the presumptive diseases, the presumption is that you were exposed to the chemical because you came down with that disease. And the diseases include severe diabetes. In fact, my civilian SSA in my brigade, when I commanded my brigade, basically died from Agent Orange poisoning.
Wow.
He was a tunnel rat. You know what that was.
Yes.
And he was exposed to it and had severe diabetes, almost uncontrolled diabetes.
Wow.
And he also ended up getting all cancer throughout his body in his later life and ended up dying from it. So, yes, he was exposed, and I believe that these other people were also exposed. The Blue Water Navy, the people in Thailand, where they used it on the perimeters of the air bases, and the folks that served in the DMZ in Korea.
So besides diabetes, what are some other symptoms that comes down from this?
Ischemic heart disease. So if you have, heart disease issues, that's another one. And there are all different types of cancers that have resulted from this, including they believe that can be transferred to your children.
Wow.
So very, very severe diseases. And the amazing thing to me is that this bill passed unanimously in the House. And knowing the political situation, and I'm going to talk politics because that's what this is, but knowing the political situation, it's amazing to me that they would pass it unanimously in the House.
Yeah.
And then in the Senate, you would not. And the stated reason, the absolute stated reason is that it's too expensive.
Wow.
And to me, this is just abhorrent. It's just unbelievable. If you put people at risk, you have to be ready to take care of them when they come down with something caused by their service to their country.
Agreed. And is there any documented cases of this happening with our naval seamen coming out of the Vietnam era?
I can tell you that I've talked to the service officer for the state of New York for the VFW, and he has a case right now that was just rejected. The person has all of the symptoms of Agent Orange poisoning. He has the ischemic heart disease. He has the diabetes. He has the various cancers, and his case was denied because there was no law requiring it. So the amazing thing to me was that one of our U.S. senators would come out and say it's just too expensive. We can't do it because it's too expensive. This is a cost of going to war.
Exactly.
And the senator's name is Senator Enzi. He's from Wyoming.
Okay.
And his phone number, if you would like to express your thoughts to him, is 202-224-3424. I have called his office, and I have told him that I think this is just outrageous, that it would be too expensive to take care of veterans that are suffering from a disease caused by their service.
Exactly. I agree. And that's a number that I'll definitely call and find out, what's going on. Why is this happening? Because we have to take care of our veterans. We do.
Absolutely. And this to me is, as I said, abhorrent.
Exactly. Now, what are some of the other bills going through our legislation right now for veterans?
Okay. On the federal level, one of the other big ones is transitional assistance. And right now, when you're leaving the service, when you're leaving active duty, there are basically areas to go for jobs, areas to go for whatever transition type assistance you need. But it's only for about 3 months.
Wow.
And it's a major life change coming off of active duty and going to the civilian world. It's two different focuses in your life.
Yes.
The transition assistance bill would extend that period before you come off of active duty and after to a year. Again, very important. You want to bring these people back into society in a sane, ordered manner so that you don't have issues with a veteran suddenly alone in society. Because that's one of the biggest items that you have problems with.
Yeah.
In the military, there's always your buddy.
Yeah.
You get out, there may not be anybody around that you can even talk to who's been through what you've been through.
Exactly. And I've been through a lot throughout my military career, and I know that, I wish I had more time for the transition coming out also.
Yep.
I'm still in the process of trying to get the help that I need to be able to function in the civilian world.
Yep.
And it is difficult. So I agree with you on that. What other legislations are there?
Well, I'm the poster child for the third piece of legislation. The third piece of legislation is called concurrent receipt.
Yeah.
And what's strange to me is I worked in the civilian world because I was in the reserves for a lot of my career. And in the civilian world, if you got hurt on the job and you got paid for that it's totally separate from everything else with regards to your benefits or your retirement.
Yeah.
So if you got paid because you got hurt on the job, that's okay. You got paid for that, and it took care of it, and they took care of you and recovered you back to your normal duty. But in the military, right now, for example, I have a 10% disability for my hearing. And that was attributed to my time in Iraq when every day for the first year we were getting mortared and rocketed.
Yeah.
And no matter what you do, you can't wear hearing protection 24 hours a day.
No.
It just can't be done.
No.
So we would get rocketed and mortared. The loud noise destroys your hearing. It's a known problem. The same thing with people that work around artillery. I mean, they're going to lose their hearing. It's going to happen.
Exactly. Same with infantry.
Helicopters, infantrymen, yes, absolutely. So I get a stipend every month from the VA. That's very nice, and that's tax-free, which is nice also.
Yeah.
However, when they gave me that stipend, they decreased my pension from the Army for my 34 years, 9 months of service by the exact amount.
Wow.
So you gave it to me in this hand, and you took it away in this hand.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but the pension is because I served 34 years, 9 months.
Exactly.
The disability is because I got hurt while I was doing it. I've lost part of my hearing. And I can't attribute it anymore to marital deafness. She knows the truth. I really do have a problem hearing her.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's reality.
Yeah.
Now, if you're over 40%, they do not subtract it. But because I'm below that 40%, they subtract it. And to me, what's even worse is that should I die, my wife will get a portion of my pension for the rest of her life. But because that pension is reduced because of my injury, she will lose money from the pension payment she would get for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. So you're basically balancing your budget on the back of disabled veterans and widows. That's what you're doing. And that's how I describe it when I talk to the legislators down in Washington, D.C. And it's like, what do you mean? It doesn't make sense. So
how often do you go down to D.C. to talk to the legislators?
we go down once a year.
Okay.
We go down and we have 3 days of talking to the various legislators. And we split up the entire state of New York. So I get to talk to our own, and I also get to talk to some from other districts. So
That's good. That's good. Now, if our viewers wanted to get a hold of our legislative and talk to them about these bills that are going through now, who would they contact?
you should contact your own legislator because that's whom you have the most influence on.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to know what district you're in, and then you can look them up. The best way to do it is on the internet. And yes, I'm not totally internet friendly, but I can still figure out who it is.
Yeah.
And then the best thing to do is to either call them up or stop in at their local office. And a stopping in has a lot more impact than a phone call or an email or anything like that. So stopping in to talk to them is usually the best way.
All right. Now, have you known people that actually went into their offices and stopped in to talk to them?
Absolutely.
And what were they met with? How were they treated? Who were they talking to? Do you know?
In most cases, you talk to staff, not the principal, particularly with the senators, understanding that there's only 2 senators for a state, so rather busy. Even when we go down to D.C. as a group, we very rarely get to talk to the senators, but most legislators tend to make time to speak, especially if you're a constituent, because they're there because somebody voted for them.
Exactly.
And the thing to think about when you're talking to them is that generally the legislators believe that if they get one contact from a constituent, it means that there's about 15 others, because when you talk to somebody, you're talking also to your wife, you're talking to your children. There's about 15 in your immediate group that are likely to be of the same mind as you with the same impact. So 1 equals 15. That's the general rule of thumb.
And that's very understandable because I know we deal with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Enough of the legislative. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. I would love to get into the organizations that you deal with and how they help our veterans in the Staten Island community. Now, you're a part of 3 different organizations here in Staten Island. You got the American Legion, the Veteran of Foreign Wars, and the Korean War Veterans.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know they all stand different in their organizations. What does it take to be able to get into those 3 different organizations?
Okay. For the American Legion, you need to have served during a period of combat that is recognized by the federal government, and that's all. So, for example, my father, who served in World War II.
Bless his heart.
Yes. And never deployed out of the United States.
Okay.
He was slated to go into the invasion of Japan, which didn't happen. So he could belong to the American Legion because he served for 4 years during a period of conflict, recognized World War II. But he could not join the Veterans of Foreign War. If he had gone into Japan, his service would have counted for both organizations. So the VFW, or the Veterans of Foreign Wars, you have to have served within a conflict zone, a recognized conflict zone.
Okay.
So that's the difference. So, for example, in my case, my service in Korea, even though it was in 2004 and 5, counts because Korea is still, to this day, considered a conflict zone.
Oh, wow.
Because there was never a formal treaty at the end of that. I know that we're negotiating one now, but the fact of the matter is there's no treaty. It's still considered a combat zone. When I was there in 2004 and 5, there were bullets still flying at the DMZ.
Wow.
When our post commander, because you were in our VFW post, served there in the 70s, it's when 3 of our servicemen were killed, beaten to death in the DMZ for going out to cut a tree down.
Wow.
So it's still considered a combat zone.
Okay.
The second part of my service was the 2 years and 2 months in Iraq, again, on the ground in a combat zone. So that also, either one of those 2 would have qualified me for being there. Now, if on the other hand, I had served in Europe during the Iraq War, I would be eligible for the VFW, but not for the, I'm sorry, I'd be eligible for the American Legion, but not for the VFW.
Gotcha.
And then the Korean War veterans, I can belong to them because, again, I served in Korea and have the Defense of Korea Medal.
Gotcha. So till today, Korea is known as a combat zone.
It is still considered a combat zone. It is still considered a 1-year tour only, except for commanders.
Yes.
So and certain others,
There you go.
specific people that get stuck there for longer than that.
Yeah. So people till today that actually go there and serve their 1-year tour or whatever could actually join the Korean veteran war veterans.
They could join the Korean War veterans, or they could join the Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Oh,
Both.
wow. So both, even if they haven't seen combat because of the type of situation it is there.
Because you're in the theater, you're susceptible to the risk of being in conflict.
I didn't even know that. Wow,
No.
that's interesting.
And, I mean, you have to realize that I spent a lot of time in Seoul, and Seoul, South Korea, is within artillery range of the DMZ.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly things could go bad in that country, and there's not a lot of places to go.
No, not at all. Now, with these 3 organizations, would you be able to talk to us about what they're doing within the community and for our veterans?
Sure. We'll start with the American Legion.
Okay.
The American Legion is the largest wartime veterans organization. The biggest things they do in the community is they do veteran outreach. So we talked about transition assistance and getting out of the military and into civilian life. One of the things that I recommend to any veteran getting out is join, because there's your buddy back to you.
Yeah.
You only see him maybe once a month or twice a month at meetings or at some other event, but that's the most important thing for you. Hey, suppose you're feeling down today, you can give him a call, and hey, somebody will be there to talk to you. Somebody that's been there where you've been.
Exactly.
So that's very important. Community events. our Legion posts here on Staten Island, we have a number of community organizations. The Travis 4th of July Parade meets at the post.
Nice.
We have several other organizations that meet at the post. The Vikings, which is the organization of firefighters, meets at the post.
Okay.
The Traffic Civic Association all meet at the post. And there's an emergency response group that meets at the post. In fact, they were there last night. All of these meet there because it's a center of the community. It's a community type of center. When they're doing a big sewer and water project in our community, so they had the meetings, one of the meetings with the contractor at the post, because that's where people go.
Exactly.
So all of these things are done.
Now,
For children's,
okay, go ahead.
For children, there's a number of different items for children. First, if you are the son of a wartime veteran, you can join the Sons of the Legion.
Oh, wow.
So that's another organization that you can join, and that's an auxiliary type situation where you can help out at the post, do things at the post. When we have a picnic or something, they might be the ones handing out the soda, things like that. But the other items they have is they have a program where they will pick students from the local high schools and send them away for a week to a intensive leadership course.
Wow.
And it is how our government works. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with what's being taught in schools, but it doesn't seem to be what I was taught when I was a kid. So this is an intensive leadership-focused program on how the government works. And during this, they actually elect officials at all different levels. So you could run for dog catcher, or you could run for mayor, or for governor.
Nice.
And it's how the government works and what you have to do to get certain things done in government.
Wow.
So they also have an oratorical contest for children. Again, there's scholarships involved in that type of thing.
That's good.
All these types of things are out there. And in the grammar schools, we have a local grammar school writing contest where they write sort of a veterans-friendly topics.
Okay.
And we give, again, cash prizes at the conclusion.
That's nice. I really look forward to that.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars has similar programs, patriotic writing contest. There is an oral contest for older students, for high schools, all leading to scholarships. And by the way, our post has had fourth place winners at state level in both of those contests. And those children came home with about $500.
Wow.
So that's a nice incentive to do something like this. I'd like to get them up to the higher levels, because if they can get to national, the prizes, of course, go up in dollar amount.
Yeah.
So, but we haven't quite gotten one there yet. To keep practicing.
There you go.
The lot of other things, again, for veterans. You know that at your wife's reserve unit here on Staten Island, they have a deployed group over someplace.
Yeah.
Someplace hot.
Yeah.
But we send packages to them.
Nice.
We've sent them Christmas candies, things like that, snacks. I found snacks were very wanting in a combat zone.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, those packages that we got, especially when I was over there, I loved them.
Yep.
I enjoyed getting them, even if they weren't
Do
from my
not
family.
send chocolate chip cookies. They
No.
do not travel
No.
well. They melt into one giant lump. That's experience. I had to tell my mother, I appreciate it, but pizza does travel though.
There you go. I've never seen that one though.
Oh yeah, we had 5 pizzas sent to us when I was in Iraq, and you had to microwave them, but they still came through. They were better than the pizza at the PX.
There you go.
That was our function there.
Wow.
Both groups do participate in parades. We go to the children's schools. We talk about different subjects with the children. Just recently, we had this year has been the 100th year anniversary of the end of World War I.
Oh, wow.
And we have a person buried here on Staten Island who was just recently given the Medal of Honor for his service in World War I. And there was another individual from the state of New York, actually from New York City, who was also given a Medal of Honor just recently. And these were primarily not given the Medal of Honor because of their race or their religion. So one of them, as I said, is buried here on Staten Island. So we thought a writing contest about what do we think has changed since these people were given whatever awards they were given, and what's different.
Yeah.
And we had 2 children that did very well on this and were given checks for their writing effort again, but also the family of one of those World War I veterans gave out 3 Medal of Honor coins.
Oh, my God.
And those are very rare.
Yeah.
There's not too many people with a collection with a Medal of Honor coin.
Wow.
One to each of the children and one to the principal of the school who got this program going for her kids. And when you belong to a wartime group, at some point, there's not going to be anybody left.
Exactly.
So the organization has to plan itself to go out of business at some point.
Yeah.
Whereas the VFW, as far as I can tell you, there's always been a conflict somewheres. So there's always going to be people that are eligible. The American Legion the same way. In fact, the American Legion is trying to get Congress to increase the eligibility period, because the statement is that since World War II, since that began, we have been in conflict. Okay, you came out of World War II and you went into the Cold War.
Yeah.
And the Cold War continued to what, the 90s?
Yeah.
Well, all of those veterans are not covered unless they served in a recognized conflict period.
Wow.
So you have veterans who were after the Korean War but before Vietnam that can't join.
Nice.
So they're trying to get the entire period covered.
Good.
And if you think about it, in the 90s, from 90s to now, anybody's eligible because we haven't been in peace.
Exactly. Now, real quick, if somebody wanted to find out more information, how would they contact the groups?
They're available online again. If you're not able to get online, the best way to do is to call me.
Okay.
718-698-5269. If I'm not at home, just leave a message. I'll get back to you. But again, I strongly recommend joining. First off, because when I go down to talk to the legislators, and I will be doing that in March, one of the first things I talk about is how many members I'm here representing.
Yeah.
Because numbers is what gets you in the door and gets you talking to them.
Exactly.
That's why they talk to us, because we have 50,000 VFW members in the state of New York, and we vote.
Agreed.
That's the other item. We tend to vote more than the civilian population. In fact, I was highly annoyed when I was in Iraq that my absentee ballot didn't get there in time.
Wow. And Paul, on that note, I'd love to ask you back again because I know we have a lot more to talk about, and thank you for coming on the show.
No problem.
All right. And until next time, make sure you thank a veteran. And if you guys have any questions for me about the show or about what we've talked about, you can reach me by email at combatzone360@gmail.com. Have a good day.